Hello, I'm Voidlust. Today we will be learning how to use Mr Voxel. What is Mr Voxel? Mr Voxel is a first-generation voxel editor, aimed at beginner to intermediate voxelmancers. Now that you have learned the basics in our previous lesson, Voxelmancy Essentials, we will show you how to use Mr Voxel to move voxels around, so you can create the shapes you desire in the reactor easily. Let's head on over to Mr Voxel, so we can introduce you to all of the different areas and parts, before we demonstrate how to use him. The first area you will come to is our public work area. This area is open for anyone to work and practice in. There is a tinkerer's workshop, vault, and mailbox here for easy access. This area is also in close proximity to the spire should you need other crafting stations. There are also chests here that contain templates of both Mr Voxel and Mr Voxel Jr., so you can have one of your very own. Please only take one copy of each. Lastly, there are several different style of reactors here for you to copy and use. Please remember this area is public, so please be considerate of others and clean up once you are finished working. At the top of the stairs is the main control panel. Here you will find the submit and reset buttons. If you ever encounter a problem or you submit invalid data, the reset button will get Mr Voxel ready again. Also be aware that there is a 30-second automatic reset after your reactor has been selected. This is the main user interface for Mr Voxel. It is designed to represent a color-coded reactor, to help you visualize which voxel you want to modify, and the 3 axes needed to input coordinates. Each colored axis has 5 inputs that correspond to the position you would like to move the voxel. The amount moved for each input is 1/2 the width of the standard cube shape, originating at the center. This is the ready indicator. When it is lit green, Mr Voxel is ready to be used. On the left is the progress bar. After hitting the submit button, the progress bar will fill up as Mr Voxel finds the correct reactor corner you requested. On the right is the reset progress bar. When you press the reset switch, or 30 seconds has passed since Mr Voxel found your reactor corner, this progress bar will fill up, and Mr Voxel will then be ready to be used again. Once you have selected your positions and pressed submit, Mr Voxel will find the correct corner for your reactor. This is done in 2 stages. The first is indicated by the purple light on top, which indicates which panel your reactor will be on. Once that is found, a second white light will appear in the center of the reactor. That reactor contains the colored-coded corners to move the corresponding voxel to your input position, to create your desired shape. That covers all the parts of Mr Voxel. Now let's go through an example and see exactly how Mr Voxel works. The first thing I am going to do is copy one of the color-coded reactors off to the side, so it is easier to see what we are doing. Mr Voxel is designed to help you visualize as much as possible. You will need to know which voxel is to be moved. The voxels are represented by the 8 colored cubes on the reactor. You also need to know where you would like to move the voxel to. This is limited in range on the Mr Voxel interface and does not cover every possible position. However, it should be noted that it is possible to use Mr Voxel to create shapes that will allow you to easily create complementary shapes, doubling the amount of corners available for Mr Voxel. This is far beyond beginner use, and will be explained further in a later lesson. Let us modify the red voxel. Now it is time to decide where we would like to move it to. First we will work on the blue axis. Let's move the voxel to the center of the middle shape. Now onto the green axis. We need to decide where along the green axis we would like to move the voxel. Let us choose the maximum distance down, or 1/2 of a voxel past the bottom of the red shape on the reactor. Last we have the red axis. We will keep the voxel in its default position, flush against the left side of the red shape on the reactor. Now that we know which voxel we will be moving and where we will be moving it to, it is time to head on over to the main user interface for Mr Voxel. Before we input our previous decisions though, we will quickly go over how exactly to operate the user interface. By clicking the orb on the corner of the colored shapes you can select the voxel you plan to move, and the corresponding axes you need to input will light up. This step is not required, and is here to help new players better visualize where they need to input their values. You can begin inputting values directly if you are comfortable enough. In order to select the desired position, just press the orb on the correct axis. This will reach us to that position. Each orb represents a movement equal to 1/2 of the cube shape on the appropriate direction. Do not worry about selecting the wrong position. You can freely change the location as much as you like, and the values will not be sent to Mr Voxel until you hit the submit button. If you have a voxel selected but choose an invalid axis, the lit voxel will turn off, since it is no longer valid. Remember, it is not required to have a voxel selected to input your 3 values. If a voxel is not selected when hitting submit, the appropriate voxel will light up after Mr Voxel finds the correct reactor, so you know which colored corner of the reactor you should take off the wall. Now let's go input the values we decided on for the red voxel earlier. First we will select the red voxel. As you can see, the 3 valid axes for the red voxel lit up to help us visualize where we need to input our values. We first decided to move the voxel along the blue axis, so it was in the middle of the center shape. So we will choose that button on the highlighted blue axis. Next we said that we would move the voxel along the green axis down as far as it will go. We will press the 5th button on the highlighted green axis. And lastly, along the red axis, we decided we would keep the voxel in the default position, flush with the inside vector of the red shape on the reactor. We do this by selecting the 2nd button on the highlighted red axis. We now have all of our axes selected for the red voxel. All that is left is to go back to the main control panel and press the submit button. You will see the progress bar begin to fill. Shortly after pressing submit, you should see the panel indicator light up, as well as the reactor indicator for the particular reactor you need. All that is left to do is to copy the red corner on the reactor that Mr Voxel picked for you, and replace the red corner on the reactor we were working on. As long as you choose the correct color, you will not need to worry about rotating or mirroring the corners for the reactor. All you need to do is copy and paste. As you can see, the corner that Mr Voxel found for us moved the voxel precisely where we asked him to move it. It's that simple. While extensive testing has been done on Mr Voxel, it is always possible that some bugs may have slipped through. If you experience a problem, the first thing you should do is use the reset button and try again. If the problem persists, please send a mail to me in-game, Voidlust, with as much detail about your problem as possible. Also, Mr Voxel and Mr Voxel Jr. are free to the public. The claim is set up so you can template both versions. There are also pre-made templates in the chests up in the work area. Please keep an eye out for our next lesson, how to use Mr Voxel Jr. I hope you enjoy Mr Voxel and find him useful. Thank you for watching. Take care.